Hi everyone, welcome to our third episode of Nuscreen Live. We really appreciate everyone who's been watching and sharing and commenting with us. It's been a lot of fun. We're really excited about today's topic and we've got some great guests here. We've got Corey Herscu, who is the president of Herscu and Goldsilver, a leading tech PR firm here in Toronto. And we've got Patrick O'Rourke, who is the senior editor of Mobilesyrup. Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Sorry, you know, I have to get my hair did for you. So.
Yeah, you guys are great. And you're kind of coordinated, matching.
We did it on purpose.
We really did it. We spoke this morning and said, what are you wearing?
It's great.
We're good like that.
Awesome.
We're good like that.
So today we're going to be talking about storytelling, and specifically in technology. And one of the things that's been coming up a lot with startups that we're talking to is that when you're talking about a product or service in the tech space, people tend to tap into the left side of the brain where you're talking more about price and specs and more about the facts and figures. But a lot of people are really curious about the storytelling aspect of it and how that's important. How do you guys think that that's changed, and why do you think storytelling is important for technology brands?
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, it's always good when I get a pitch or a story sent to me that has like a unique angle of some sort, like some kind of a news hook that's different from the kind of thing that you see all the time. Like there's so many like Kickstarters and Indiegogos, and they're worth writing about, but it has to be something that's cool and different and something that we haven't seen before.
To put it very, very bluntly, everybody has a bias with their product, and everybody thinks their product's amazing. Chances are it isn't, and it's really hard to seed through the BS, so to speak, of all the what's vaporware. And to anyone who doesn't know what vaporware, it's pretty much vapor, which is air. It's a fake product. It's a fake product.
That's a good explanation.
I'm not going to try to put any other sugar to it. It's a fake product. So you really need to be able to have a really good story behind the product to sell it, because you have to understand the people who you are going at for the story get 5,001 pitches a day of the same stupid story and the same garbage product, and what makes yours different than everybody else's. So yeah.
One of the questions that we get a lot is about, you were talking a little bit about vaporware, and I think a lot of people talk about when is the right time to actually start telling your story. So some people say, get out there, start spreading the news as soon as possible, and other people say, wait till you actually have a product or something that works before you guys, go out there and tell the public. What are your views on that?
That goes back to the vaporware topic. If you don't have a product to show, don't talk about the product that you want to sell. Period.
Yeah, I mean, like as a journalist, I'm not going to want to cover something that I think is never going to actually come to market, right? Because there's no value in that to my readers.
Yeah.
So
you have to go back and make an edit on your post.
Exactly. So I don't want that to happen, right? Because that makes us look silly if we cover something that's never actually going to exist. So often I'll use my best judgment in terms of what's worth covering and what, like, I have a background in tech, so what I think actually could come together and become a real device someday.
And how do you weigh that out just based on a pitch? Because you don't really have necessarily always the product in front of you. So how do you weigh out really if somebody is? I
mean, it's really hard sometimes because there's like everything comes through Kickstarter, Indiegogo, things like that these days.
Yeah.
And there's so many devices that, like Corey's talking about vaporware, they never actually come to fruition, right? And it's hard, so I try to use my best judgment, like other products that I've written about that I know have actually come to market that are similar maybe. And also common sense, like there's some things that show up on Kickstarter or all the crowdfunding platforms that like you read the description and you see the video and you're like, this is never going to come to market. Like no one's going to
making broad claims. If they're telling you that their product will let you fly, chances are it's not
exactly,
let you fly.
right? So
or not in the next couple of years anyway.
Yeah. A lot of it's common sense, really.
Yeah.
And it lends back also to like a future topic we're going to speak about relationships, where if I pitch something, or any tech journalist period pitches something, that pitch is already going to lend credibility to the product, because Patrick, writing the journalist, is going to assume that if I am taking on the product, it's worth their read, or I've already done the vetting enough, so he can trust, if Corey's sending it to me, it's worth my time to read it. And that's what comes back to the relationship, is building that trust, knowing that I'm not going to send him a flying jetpack that is scheduled to launch in 6 months. He's like, there's gonna be that little bit. It's almost like a filter.
Yeah. So when you have like a PR firm representing the product, it's like it's already been vetted, versus if you got the pitch directly from the company itself?
Well, it depends on too, like if you trust the person who's sending the pitch to you, right? Like I trust Corey, and he's never sent us a pitch that didn't make sense in the context of Mobilesyrup and what we cover. So I know that whatever he's sending us, 95% of the time, it's going to be good and it's going to be worth writing about, right?
And what about that other 5%, Corey? Just kidding.
No, listen, you can't. Listen. At the end of the day, I really enjoy what I do. I've been told that I'm really good at it, and I just need to ride that wave and do good things. Not saying there are other people who do really, really well in tech PR. It's just that chances are, if I pitch something to a website and they know me, it's gonna get read a little bit quicker than somebody else's pitch. And I'm not saying, again, not saying that's every time, but I'm saying if it comes to products that might have a sense of vaporware to them, Patrick will say to me, dude, is this for real or are you wasting my time? If I say to him,
which I've done before.
Which he's done many, many, many times, so I don't want you to think there's any bias here whatsoever. Him and his team have called me on my shit, and a lot of times I've said, look, if you don't believe it, I'm not going to force you, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. I don't have a 100% hit ratio, and like people have to know that. All my stuff isn't covered all the time, but I also don't take on a lot of clients if I think that the product's not going to be real.
So what kind of things do you do when you first meet with a startup to vet them, to see if they're the right fit for working with you?
In terms of seeing the product or just in general?
Just in general, if you would take on a client or not.
I want to see where they are in the product. I want to see how close they are. If they have a product they want to go, I don't even talk to them if they won't have something working within at least 6 weeks of going live. Because there's always going to be delays. If they say, oh, we'll have it that week, that week's going to turn into 4 days late to a week late. Then it's like, I'm going to have a demo day next Wednesday. On Tuesday, I say, I need to push it a week.
Yeah.
That threw off his entire schedule now.
Yeah, and that's when like alarm bells start going off on my side of things too. Like, is this actually legit? Is
the
product
multiple
ready?
delays.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's how well the team works together, where they are with budget, where they are with launch strategy. Like, do they even have a brand? Do they have a good website? Like, they might have the greatest product in the world, but the website is garbage and they don't have copy. Like, there's so many things that wrap it together, which is why a lot of times, again, the relationship with Nuscreen is that I'll go in, they have a great product with no story. Nuscreen creates that story to come to me so I can help sell the product.
Right.
And they all run together.
And so does that matter at what part of the process that happens? Or do you think that they should be like ramped up and ready to go so that when the product's ready, you can go public with it?
So one of Herscu Goldsilver's clients is League, and Mike Serbinis is a very well-known entrepreneur who's Kobo for anyone watching right now in DocSpace. Like, Google Mike Serbinis and you'll see. And one of the things he said is that Herscu Goldsilver adds the jet fuel their startup needs. I'm very well known for being able to turn around, take a product if I see something interesting, and I can literally turn around coverage in a very short period of time. So I say, like, yes, of course there's planning, which is why I have my team behind me for the media kit, the schedules, the calendars. I don't know how to do any of that shit. I'm telling you, and I'm being serious. This is why I have a team, so I'm not good at it. But when that is ready to be spoken about, I can have it in front of some of the biggest names in the world in a very short time span. And that's pretty much, if your product isn't ready to be in front of the Wall Street Journal, in front of The Verge, I'm not saying don't come to PR, I'm saying you have to reach out early to get that content working, like to get everything ready to go, so to speak.
How do you find that the Canadian market is different from like clients that are trying to reach global audiences? So do you feel like there's an advantage with the Canadian community, or do you think it's challenging to get the kind of exposure that you're looking for?
I think like there's so few publications in Canada that cover tech. We're like, Mobilesyrup's the leading like personal tech publication in Canada. We're the only site really in the space. And like there's the mainstream publications that have tech sections as well. But they're often seen, because I used to work at one, I used to work at the National Post, they're often seen as an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the major differences is there's just so few publications for people that are pitching tech to go to.
And not only that, but again, the bigger the site and the more writers, the harder it is to get seen.
That's true.
I was having a talk with a friend of mine at TechCrunch, and he showed me his inbox at CES, and he had 45,000 unread emails. And I said, 45,000.
I thought mine was bad. That's pretty bad.
Really stop and think about 45,000 unread.
Yeah.
And I stopped and said to him, like, is this not, like, I'm having a panic attack. He says, I long accepted that I'm not going to read every single one. He said, I'm like, so how does somebody break through this? He says, if they aren't in my priority inbox, they're not being read. First of all, period. I don't even bother the journal because there's so much garbage. And I said, so, okay, so now somebody's hit your focused, your primary inbox.
Yeah.
Now how do they get read? He said, I'll read 2 or 3 emails a day. The first thing I do in the morning is scan my inbox for a name I recognize. I don't care what the pitch is. If it's, he says, again, it's you, we're a buddy of mine. He says, if it's you, I'll open it. If it's another agency, I'll open it. Because I know, filtering it down, when you're coming to me with everything that I need to create a story. There's a lot of agencies who go, hello there, or hello Mrs. Ha, or hello whatever. And like, if they're not going to take the time to do it properly, I'm not going to take the time to read it.
Yeah. So that's another question that we've had a lot. So there's a lot of PR firms now that are taking on tech. So just like a lot of publications are starting to cover tech, and they're adding a new section of the site called gadgets or something. They think that one of their interns can write about tech, and then there's a lot of PR companies that are taking on tech as well, thinking that this is a growing industry that they want to get a part of. Like, how can a company that's trying to work with you understand the difference between someone who's got credibility in the space or someone who's just jumping on because they see it as an area for growth?
I've heard the metaphor a lot in PR, bloggers in general. People are like, jumping into a space is like throwing a Band-Aid into the ocean. It's very serious. Like,
that's true.
Don't be a jack of all trades if you're not ready for it yet. I'm not going to walk right now after I fix the light switch and say I'm an electrician. If you want to show results to your clients, partner up with agencies who are focused on you have a lead. It's a tech client. I'm not saying give it up, which you could also do and take a cut. I'm not even saying that. Outsource. Go make partnerships. Go to somebody and say, I'm saying like me or any other tech PR agency and say, let's partner on this. I will be the lead. Help us out. Let's do a revenue share. You look like a golden child. We get paid. The client gets the results. Stop making it about ego and making it about deliverables and results and showing that PR does have tangibility behind it, that results can happen, and that if you have the right people behind you, it doesn't matter what you're working on. I would never take on a lipstick. I wouldn't expect a lipstick PR agency or like a women's cosmetics to take on an app. Just wouldn't expect it because going into Cision or whatever the ones, taking off emails and blasting it out, you have a 1 in a million chance of getting it opened.
And I get a lot of those. Like I get a lot of like stuff that makes no sense. Like I've always written about tech. I've never covered anything else for my whole career, and I'll get like pitches from like people representing makeup companies and stuff like that. And I'm always like, well, how did I get on this list? And it's because like Cision and they just and it doesn't make sense, right? And I've never really understood that approach to doing PR and outreach when you're just like blasting 1,000 people and like shooting fish in a barrel, hoping that you're gonna get some
shit on the wall.
Well, that's what it is, right? Like, and I never get it.
No, it's look. I don't want to say it's scary, but like I jumped into this from being a journalist, where I spent 4 years chasing relationships, not chasing stories, and that's when I realized that like I'm not saying I'm a bad writer. I'm a great writer. Knuckle top to Daniel Bader, formerly Mobilesyrup, now Mobile Nations, for helping me become a better writer because he coached me a lot while we were growing the Cellular Guru. But I'm not the greatest writer, but I have a voice. And I realized while I was chasing that, I never really cared to break stories, but I cared to know X guy from X website. And when I spoke to him, him and I had a personal rapport, whether it was going for drinks or just like, I'd email him and say, hey bud, I remember we spoke about your kid being sick, how are they doing? Little things like that resonate a long way, and I don't pitch all the time. And now when I do, whether it's email, Hangouts, iMessage, Facebook Messenger, they know that when I'm coming to them with such a specific story related to a beat that they want to cover, they have no reason not to listen to me. And I say that to any lifestyle agency in the city, don't struggle, stop banging your head into a wall if you're not getting the covers that you want. Reach out. I'm the most approachable person in the world, Herscu Goldsilver, and I want to help you out. I want to help demystify this like fog of intangibility around PR in general, but mainly tech PR.
If there is a tech PR company that is, say, looking at 5 different agencies to work with, what are some key things that they can look for to help distinguish what agencies are credible in the space and who's just kind of jumping on now and trying to figure it out?
Results. Go look at the clients they've worked with and look at the coverage they've gotten. Don't use a PR newswire release as that, because that's paid, not earned media. And don't look at sponsored content because that's paid, not earned. Look at, just Google SEO of the client, see what they've got, and see, was it a contributor post on TechCrunch, which could have easily been ghostwritten, or was it a staff writer? Like, do your research, find, like, correct me, like, am I...
No, that makes sense, yeah.
I feel like I'm
exactly.
talking here.
No, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Just do research. Do your research. It really comes down to that. It's knowing your audience and doing your research.
How do you guys feel that the tech game in Canada has changed recently?
There's a lot more companies. There's a lot more startups.
Everybody is a tech startup.
Yeah, everything is.
Everybody's a tech startup. If they have a website now, they say they're a tech startup. They don't have that tech involved in their product.
Everybody has an app too.
Everybody has an app.
Yeah.
Everybody, I was at the Tech Shook and there was one that was just like, I'm not saying a name because I'm not going to discredit anybody, but it was just, I looked at them like, seriously? And they were so, you could see, the only thing that made it great about what it was the passion that they were giving off. Was like, I was feeling that passion and it's like almost like you want to help them. But I'm like, on one side I want to, and the other side I'm like, I am not going to Patrick or Globe and Mail or The Verge and saying, I rep this product. Because like, I'm sorry, but there's some things that's just like, I can't. No. And just because you are doing something that's cool doesn't necessarily make it tech. It could be design. It could be innovation. If it doesn't have a power button attached to it, or if it doesn't connect to something that does, it's pretty much not tech.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think that that's going to change over the next couple of years with the surge of entrepreneurs and people trying to start up a company? How do you think that that's going to change the Canadian landscape?
I think it's just going to keep growing, right? Like the amount of app and startup pitches and IoT stuff that I get on a daily basis is crazy. Like we were talking before about the amount of emails that journalists get. Like I get 200 emails a day. So I think it's just going to keep growing and keep getting bigger.
And they're going to run out of money. Not everything is scalable. Just because you have a great idea.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Everybody's biased. Sorry, I just did the right thing. Everybody is. I did. Apologies, I burped. Just because you're passionate doesn't mean it's scalable and doesn't mean you can make money. And you have to. You know what? Was it Kenny? What's that country music singer? Kenny something. You gotta know when to fold them. You gotta know when. You know this song.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You gotta know when to fold them. Like it's all well and good to create one, get your cash injection, but how are you gonna scale and how are you gonna build it up and how you have to realize that at some point everybody's gonna be selling off the furniture. Everybody's going to be. Take a look at. I can almost guarantee you that at least 7.5 out of 10 of the pitches Patrick got last year, those startups don't exist this year.
I can think of like 2 or 3 off the top of my head.
They just don't exist. They were great ideas that weren't scalable because they just weren't scalable. Mm-hmm. And these people have to that's how I got into PR, is I realized that journalism is a fun, rewarding career. But unless you're working for a publisher or you're working for somebody who's monetized, it's hard to make money in it. And I've always been somebody who's unemployable, like I have to do things myself. And I did it with my website, The Cellular Guru, and I just couldn't monetize it. And I couldn't make a life off of that. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said, you know what, I have these relationships. I'm going to go into something where I can use my relationships to help me live a life, so to speak.
How do you think the coverage of, covering the tech startups is going to change? So you're talking about how it's changing, but if you're not a writer, do you think that there's still equal play for people who have podcasts where they review things or doing like Facebook live streams like this? Do you think there's avenues for people who aren't writers to get in the game and try to become like a multimedia journalist?
I think podcasting is huge now. Like I know podcasting sponsorship is a huge thing. We have a podcast that we do. BetaKit has a podcast that they do. They're both pretty successful in Canada. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that was sort of popular in the mid 2000s, and it's come back now, and people sort of see the value in it. And I think advertisers see the value in like a trusted person that people listen to and care about their opinion. You're reading an ad about a product that they actually think makes sense and is good.
You're also forced to hear the ads.
You are forced to hear them.
With podcasts, the reason why it's so viable, you can't fast forward through it. Like Serial, you heard about SurveyMonkey every single time, and it embedded in my head after being so into Serial.
Yeah.
All I can remember is this was brought to you by this. You're forced to listen to it.
And MailChimp?
MailChimp, yes, that's SurveyMonkey. It was something monkey.
A lot of our clients call it monkey mail.
Monkey mail. It forces you when someone sponsors a podcast or YouTube. It's great because you can't skip through the ad. Hot tip to Matthew Modis because I love him to death, but you can't skip it. So whereas you can X off the ad and you can fast forward on TV, you can do ad blockers on websites. You are forced to consume it.
That's always there.
The ad on YouTube and podcasts, you're forced to. And it's really valuable. When somebody has multiple million subscribers, they're guaranteed that those people are going to listen. Either you can convert, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink.
You're full of these things today. I love it.
I'm always full of these
Good.
things.
I hope someone's tweeting all of these.
Sound bites.
Talking about the difference between like the paid mentions you get and the earned mentions. So often when we talk with tech startups, they'll say like, they want that immediate gratification. So they think maybe going to...
I was going to say watch porn, but...
Of course you were going to say that.
I should have known.
They would go to like Facebook advertising, or they'd want to buy their impressions, or they'd want to buy the reach, because they think that doing it the hard way and going out and pitching the story and looking for it to happen organically is a longer road with less of a reward.
Talking influencers right now, or sorry?
I'm talking about startups.
Startups.
So the difference between we're going the PR route and trying to get those earned mentions within the stories versus doing the quick hit of just putting the money out and doing paid promotions. And Mobilesyrup, right? You have the options to get stories pitched, or you could buy ad space on the site as well.
I think readers are smart. Like they know when something's a piece of promoted content. And even just as like someone, like I read a ton of websites, right? Like I can identify right away when something's a piece of promoted content. You know what I mean? So I think there's more value when it's a writer that I trust that's actually writing something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, I just was listening to what you said there, and I lost my train of... No, sorry.
That's what I do. I make you lose your train of thought.
It's his goddamn hair. Okay, sorry, I got it back. A lot of times they tell startups when they want to buy ad space, don't start buying ads until you've maximized every piece of earned media you can get, because the second, if you're pitching out, and like let's just say Mobilesyrup, for example. Why would they want to cover something if they hear your ad on the radio or they see your ad floating on a website? Why would they want to cover it for free when they know they can get ad numbers free? If they know you have money to spend,
yeah, that's true.
Buy an ad on their website. Maximize as much earned media as you possibly can. Fucking beat the shit out of the earned media wherever you can, and then once your SEO, if I Google your name and I see 50 to 100 clicks of all these websites that have covered you, you now have credibility. Now start advertising. Now start working on how we can do this outside of reviews, how we can promote the content, because then if someone clicks it and they want to see a review, they see 14 sites have covered you, it's not a fake product.
Right.
But if you're automatically out of the gate spending your $10,000 budget on an ad on a radio station, no disrespect to radio stations, it doesn't really want to, you know what I mean?
Got it. We've got some questions coming in from Twitter, you guys.
Yeah.
Game?
Twitter questions.
Can you cover your own clients, and what are the rules? And can you guarantee clients coverage?
Can I cover my clients? Cover my clients if it's in terms of writing about them. I have never written about a client that's paid me. If I have written about it, I've been very transparent. I've either put in a bracket I put client on my Facebook posts if I'm paid. I have never openly written for any website that I was being paid. Like Future Shop, I was paid to write about something, but I've never written as a contributor to any place about a client and not given that like this is a client of mine. I think it's really shady when people are writing about stuff that they're being paid to write about because there's an automatic bias if you're not being transparent about it.
You see a lot of it on YouTube now.
A lot of it.
And
it makes it suck for everybody else because there's people who don't disclose how there's a relationship there, and they'll write about something without disclosing the fact that, ooh, your CEO and the owner of this are brothers. There has to always be complete transparency. That way you're covering your own ass. Have I ever guaranteed a client coverage? I can't. It's like guaranteeing no taxes. I don't want to lie. I've never not had a client get coverage. I've had not the best results, but I've never not gotten a client covered. I've never made a promise to somebody, if you sign with me, I'll get you coverage, because that would be a lie.
And how about for like a publication website? So if you have a client who has invested in online advertising, is it incentivized to write about them more in the editorial content, or is that something where you need to draw a line as well between branded content and editorial content?
That doesn't really fall to what I do at Mobilesyrup, but I know that like just personally, I would never write about a company on any website that I'm working for that's also advertising on it as well. And if I did, I would disclose it, right?
Well, or you say you have to really put at the top of it, like this is like sponsored content, because TechCrunch got into a lot of trouble with that.
This happens all the time.
Happens all the time where like it turns out that a big laptop company told the writer that if they wrote about a positive review, they could keep the laptop.
Yeah, that happens.
And that got like disclosed. I'm not saying it happens all the time. I get any OEM brand, it costs them nothing. They go to journalist X and say, here, review my product. We're just not going to ask for it back.
Right.
Happens all the time. It happened to me all the time. That doesn't guarantee a biased review, but it's almost like an unspoken truth that 90% of the time, if you're getting a product like a product from a brand, they're going to allow you to keep it. They expect an open, honest review about it. But of course, it's going to seem like they're buying the bias.
Yeah, because they're giving you the product. But I mean, for us, that's like a necessary evil, because there's no way that we could buy everything that we review, right? Like that's impossible.
You also can't afford to go and buy if the iPhone,
There's
the
no
whole
way.
row of when the Apple releases their suite. It's like you're spending $15,000 on product. Who can afford that?
And we review like 50 phones a year,
Yeah,
right?
like nobody has the budget for that.
No way that we could do that, right?
It's no different. Like they will still advertise, and they will like there has to be that common divide, that like that balance. But it's a known fact that most journalists are allowed to keep products. A lot of them, I'm not saying everybody, a lot of them give them back, but it's a fairly known rule that if a journalist has reviewed a device, chances are it was provided to them.
A lot of sites have editorial rules too, like where some places you can't keep things for a certain period of time, or you can't take things over like a certain amount of money. Like I've worked at places like that before that have rules.
It's actually funny that I was working with Bloomberg on the league announcement, and Herscu Goldsilver has corporate seats, and I said I'd love to bring you to a game, and he said I would love to accept it, but I have to buy the ticket off you because I can't take it for free. And that was totally fine, and he paid me for the ticket, and we went, and that way it didn't seem like I was buying his friendship. And like, it's again, it all depends. Some people don't care. If I want to go for a pint with Patrick after this and pay for it, it's cool. Like, we're friends and all that.
I'm totally gonna take it, and I'm totally gonna go.
And I'm totally gonna order the top of the white alcohol because agency life. But like at the same time, Wall Street Journal, you can't. You can't buy them anything. You can't buy them anything, whether it's lunch or a product. Everything, there has to be complete non-bias.
Another question: what do you think the biggest mistake is that tech startups are making right now in telling their story?
In telling their story, assuming that everybody understands what they're saying. You have to tell your story like you're talking to a 5-year-old child, because pardon my French, I hope nobody takes me wrong by this, most people are very stupid, and you have to assume that when you're talking to them, that they're not, you can't talk to them like, when it's your product, almost like Pied Piper, the example of Pied Piper, where they made it and they tested it with developers, and everyone's like, what the fuck is this?
That's
like,
true.
Speak to your audience. Don't speak to your internal agency, don't speak to your developers, speak to your audience, speak at the level, and that's why I say they're stupid. Sorry, again, if I offended, people aren't stupid, but you have to speak at a level people are going to comprehend so they can get the product that you're selling, which is why you need to hire a good copywriter.
I also think too with tech startups, like people are inundated with tons of new software tools that they're using all the time. So you're talking to someone who,
like my brain?
Amazing. The startup's been working on the product, right? So they're really close with it. They understand the ins and outs. They understand how it works. They launch it to the public, and the public has a lot of other things going on too, right?
That's why you call it launch in a beta. Join a list, have people send you the bugs. Pretty much that is what Google is. Google is perpetually in beta. Everything they do is in beta because they're getting constant feedback, and people respect a beta that things are going to be buggy and things are going to crash. If you say, this is my product, I'm live, you're going to come under scrutiny. You have to be willing to take criticism, and the only way you're going to ever evolve is to let people shit on you so you can get better.
What about you, Patrick? What are the biggest storytelling
Patrick, what about you?
mistakes?
I think like for me as a journalist, when a company has a unique story, right? Like we get so many pitches, there's so many tech startups that do the exact same thing. Like for example, I can't even count the number of like tracking device pitches that I've gotten, right? You know what I mean? I probably
Asshole, I just sent you one too.
I probably get like one a week, right? And I
Yeah.
can't write about them all because
But right about mine.
our readers aren't going to care about them, right?
So, in the priority inbox?
That comes back to stuff you guys were talking about
Yeah.
before. Like, because I have a personal relationship with Corey and I know him, I'm going to open his emails, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when someone's cold emailing me about a product, I can't guarantee that it's even going to ever come out.
Hey,
right?
Mr.
If
Patrick
it's
O'Rourke.
Indiegogo. Yeah.
How was that Blue Jays game?
Or when they spell my name wrong, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's the big thing is that it needs to be a unique product that has a unique angle, that has a unique story that I can tell,
Or
right?
don't use another agency as a reference if you haven't worked with them. I've had many times where I've been forwarded emails where somebody sent a pitch and they said, "Hey, I met you when I worked with Corey." You didn't ever work with Corey.
Oh, so they're doing the name dropping?
They're doing the name dropping. And someone said that they forwarded it to me and they said, "Did you work with this person?" I'm like, I have no idea who that is.
Someone did that with me to get a job. And they actually got the job. And then later their boss called me and said, "Oh yeah, we hired this guy because he worked for you." Never.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think it's funny. Or at least if you're gonna give me a heads up. Hey, bud, I'm like, don't
Maybe
just...
meet you first though.
Or buy me a fucking coffee, something. Like, if you're gonna use my name, at least let me get something out of it.
Yeah.
Don't think, dude, the tech community is the tightest, smallest thing in the world. Everybody talks, everybody knows each other. If you burn one person, chances are you're gonna have a really hard time because they're gonna talk to each other and they're gonna just show, it's really hot in here. They're gonna show, like, respect, just show some respect and don't burn bridges and be really cool. Like, I've learned a lot in my career. Everyone makes mistakes. I did burn some. I rectified as many as that I burned, and I've like evolved as a person, with a business, a family. And the other thing, just be good to people and treat people with respect. And if you're gonna use somebody's name, at least give them a heads up about it. If, you know what I mean? That's all. Just be good to each other and like just do your shit, keep your head down, and work hard, and eventually it'll happen.
Are there any startups that you think are doing a great job right now at getting exposure and doing it the right way that
Yeah.
stand out to you?
Oh man, give me. You go first. Let me think for a minute.
Okay, I'm gonna say some who are clients and some who aren't clients. But I don't want people to think that I have a bias here. Obviously, League because Mike
that's
Serbinis.
true.
Nothing to do with me. It's Mike Serbinis, but yeah, sorry, something to do with me, but Mike Serbinis. I love what Wealthsimple is doing with their brand. Who else is doing a really good job right now?
I'm trying to think. Well, is Ecobee considered a startup?
What do we consider a startup? Past Series A? Well,
I don't know. Like,
at what point? Like Shopify.
like
doesn't-
Ecobee is huge, right? I don't know if
It
that's
could be
still
like
considered a
Shopify
startup.
does a
They
great
do
job,
great
but they're not a
things.
startup anymore.
Yeah.
There's a bunch. Scrumble's a client that we work with who they looked at what Skype does, they're looking at what Slack does, and they're trying to show that because like Slack has become very loud and it's very hard to focus now and get work done. And they're trying to consolidate that in a cheaper package, and I love what they're doing, and we're just starting to work together and get their message out. Again, what League is doing, Borrowell, I think is really interesting how they've turned things up a notch. I love what CareGuide does. There's a bunch of things. I've worked with some of these people. I haven't worked with other, and it's just really knowing your space really well, and knowing how to get out there. Chances like you should really use PR, but a lot of times people don't need it. If you have somebody who's really good at just getting the message out there, you don't really need PR. But it just
How important do you think it is having a founder at the forefront, like a face of the company?
I mean, as a journalist, like, if there's an interesting story behind how the founder like came to put the company together, I think that helps tell a cool story on my end of things. But I don't know, like on the business side of things, how important that is. You know what I mean?
Well, you always need to have. There always needs to be a spokesperson to lend a face to the name. If that person isn't good on camera, you media train them. If they're still not good on camera, bring in a VP, bring in somebody in the C-level, just so it adds. There doesn't have to be, but there always should be a face to the brand. And if there isn't, then create I don't know. That's a really good question. I've never really thought of what you do if there's no face.
Most of the time when I get a pitch, like there's some kind of face, like some kind of
There's
person that's
somebody
linked
willing
to
to
the
speak
story,
on
right?
behalf.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
if you're not going to be a face, you need to have somebody who's going to speak on behalf to add that human aspect to the product.
But I mean, it's not like I'm not going to cover a story if there's no like
No front
specific
runner,
spokesperson.
Yeah, yeah.
If it's a bunch of people, like a team that came together with like a pretty level workspace sort of hierarchy, like I'm not going to not write about them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at, oh no, they have a face. TechTio has a face to it. Yeah, like you have to stop and really take a look at what's going on and really be able to get those sound bites and see somebody who's really pleasant on camera and who can really give you the message they want really concisely.
Awesome. All right, so two more questions. So one is PR an art or a science?
I think it's both. I think there's a lot of people tell me that like nobody can do what I do, and I don't believe that. I think that everybody has the hustle in them. It's about. I think there's an art to it, but I think it's both ways. I think that there's both because the reason why I'm able to do what I do for my clients is because I'm able to hear a story, find an angle in my head, and chances are if I like the angle, I can sell it to my journalists, and because I have those relationships, the journalists listen. So it's like that art of the hustle of knowing what to pitch and when, the timing, and who to go with what. So I think it's lends to both, but it is an art. It's definitely an art. What about you?
I don't work in PR, so I don't know. I mean,
Is there an art to pitching you?
but generally, I think there's a lot of subtleties that go into pitching. Like we talked about it before, how like if I know someone, I'm more likely to respond because I trust them. And if I'm just getting cold emailed with like a pitch that makes no sense and is
Breaking news.
and is grammatically incorrect,
Break
and is-
exclusive.
exactly, and it's like the most generic thing that I've ever seen. Like sometimes those are good. Like sometimes underneath all that crap, there's something worth writing about. But more often than not, there isn't. So I think to a certain extent there is a little bit of art to it, a little bit of subtlety. So
Art in the words.
art in the words,
You know
yes,
what Doug
yes.
says that Doug Soltis from BetaKit. He's a word star.
The words.
He's a word
Isn't
star.
that in his Twitter bio?
His Twitter. He's able to. I have never met. I lived with a guy. He's a great. I consider him a good friend of mine. He's at my wedding. I have never seen somebody as a journalist. Again, sorry, Patrick. Ask such really good, hard-hitting questions. When I've sat in on him on a few interviews, and he asked questions that you would have never thought of, and 2 times the CEO looked and was like, "Whoa, okay," and like they had to really stop and think about it. Like it's that investigative
He's good at that.
journalism on his end, where he really knows how to not only find that story and not only ask those questions, but like uncover things and dissect it and turn it into something that's good. And that's where the turning point of what BetaKit is and why it's grown, is that yes, it has the aspects of TechCrunch where it covers the stories, but there's some really, really good journalism involved in it. I'm not saying TechCrunch doesn't have good journalism. If anybody's watching, I love you all. I'm saying that like he's a really good, hard-hitting investigative journalist.
It's also because they cover like Canadian stuff, right? And there's so few publications in Canada doing investigative startup reporting, and they do a kick-ass job at
He
that.
does a really good job. So does Jessica. Love you, Jessica.
Yeah.
Okay, so final question for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Corey,
Yes.
what could a tech startup do right in front of you today to get your attention, to get you to take them on as a client?
Show me your tits. So thinking. I just had to do that. What
Can
can
we
you do?
censor some of Corey's things out?
I didn't mean to be misogynistic. I
feel
apologize.
like-
That was a joke. What can they do to get my attention? If they're gonna pitch me on something again, pitching a publicist is very similar to pitching a journalist. I get a lot of pitches for products who want my attention. Be creative about it. Think outside the box. Be original. Sometimes I get responses from news desks because I put flying puppies in scotch in capitals in the subject line, and they clicked it and I'm like, who the fuck is writing this? And then they click it and they read it and they're like, it's Corey, okay. And like a lot of people say, nobody can get away with that.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. Who gives a shit if you can get away with it? What's the worst that's gonna happen? They're gonna delete your email? Like, you want to catch my attention? Think outside the box. Do something creative. Show me a product. Even if I have seen it before, how are you doing it differently? And be able to tell me in 30 seconds what you're doing differently and why people should care.
Patrick, what
And
about
have
for
money.
you? What could tech startups do to get your attention that isn't an email pitch?
That isn't an email pitch.
Yes.
Bring in coffee.
Send us like I was gonna say send us stuff.
Send us stuff.
But like it's true though. Like if you send something that's cool, it doesn't have to be like some expensive elaborate thing. But if you send something that stands out, like some kind of product or something related to what you're pitching, it's going to stand out in a pile of emails, right? And we're going to pay a little more attention to it, probably.
Put emojis in your subject line?
Maybe put emojis in your subject line. Write a really silly press release, something like that. Because like what Corey said, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like I'm not going to open it, or I'm going to delete it. Like
it goes back to the sales thing. Don't be scared. Touch your nose and don't be scared of a no. Whether you're trying to sell something or pitching something, don't be scared of a no. The worst that's going to happen is that they're not going to open it, or they're just going to say not interested. But you can't be scared to take that leap of faith, whether it's job, work, pitching, whatever, and say, fuck it, I'm going to do it my way and hope for the best.
It's a good note to leave things on. Touch your nose and don't be afraid of a no.
Don't be afraid of your no. Is there any other audience questions? I love audience questions.
Do we have any other questions, or are we good?
Hi, Mom. No.
We good?
Oh.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, guys.
Pleasure.
It
Yeah,
was
no problem.
very informative, and I'm sure a lot of people learned a lot.
Please next time turn the air conditioning on if you don't mind. It's really hot here.
Thanks a lot, and we'll be back next week with episode 4.